Hey there, my name is Natalie Galan, and I'd like to welcome you back to this podcast, but I would also like to introduce it as it's new and ongoing from here on in, the name that I'm going to be using. So for this podcast, it's actually not going to be changed a whole lot. But it is going to overlap with my cookie business and a few other things that I'm going to try and diversify and dip my feet into. So the from here on in, this podcast will be known not as Flavored, but as Très Flavored. Très Flavored. And so basically a small change for this podcast, but a big change for my other business, which is my cookie business that was called Cultured Dough Cookies. And what I've basically tapped into is this idea of flavor. And when I considered what I was doing with my cookie business, I realized that what kind of makes my product special and what makes my cookies different is that it's all about the flavor. I'm all about playing with exotic flavors from around the world, and that's what I've created my cookie business around. And then I started thinking about it, and what I realized is that's kind of this idea of flavor is kind of what I've created starting this podcast and what I want to go forward with, which is that I see how flavor exists in many forms in our lives and not just in the food we eat. So what I want to kind of overlap that with is a few other concepts that I've recognized are really big things in our lives, which are the flavor that sort of gets us, that just we experience every day. So that can be like the little annoyances that we can't stand, that we want to bitch about. That can be like the little simple pleasures of our day, finding a quarter on the ground, or, getting a free coffee at your local Starbucks. Or, I don't know, just like somebody making an effort to hold the door for you. Or like, honestly, even the shitty flavor. Like, your boss doesn't stop picking on you and like doesn't pick on anyone else. And that's annoying the shit out of you. Or like, it feels like you're driving around town and everyone just happens to be cutting you off today. And like, I just... basically what I want to take in and play with and grow, which like I get smiley because I'm really excited about it, is this idea of like, that's what our life is about. Like, if you think about who you interact with and how you interact with them, we bond over the shittiness of our lives. We bond over the beautiful things that happen to us. And like the way that I'm seeing that now is this concept of flavor. Like, that's what adds flavor to our lives. And so I'm really friggin' stoked about it because I feel like I've kind of created this brand about my life, and it started from cookies, and that's super weird to me, but I'm super excited about that. And so then the tray part of it is actually my sort of shout out to where I've landed myself. I'm living in Montreal, and I just find it such a flavorful city because it's so diverse. And I guess, so the word très in French means very. So very flavored cookies is kind of the translation, but it's also just playing. So, I mean, kind of that you can go off on that tangent of, there's lots of flavor in these cookies. So it has a very literal meaning as well. But what I really wanted to represent with this, and I realize now that like in doing all this, I'm someone who just needs to extract meaning and reason out of everything that happens. So in coming up with this name, I was struggling a bit, and then this word came to me, and then I was like, this is exactly what I want it to be called, because it's sort of my what's the word? Just like my appreciation for the French language and how diverse that has created this city and this province in Canada. And on that note of French versus English, there's like, you can go into a very negative space of how much drama it's caused within the province, within the country, within the world, like just languages and the challenges that those sort of bring. But I just can't imagine Montreal, Quebec, Canada being such a beautiful place if it weren't for having that like little hint of like spiciness, if we're talking about flavor, you know? And I think that comes from the two languages coexisting. And so I guess what I recognized is that a large part of what drew me here and got me into this whole diversity idea and this concept of flavors and playing with like internationalism can be looked at essentially from this like two language thing. And so it was like a simple way to add that element to my brand. And I'm really stoked about it. And so I'm really stoked about it. And so yeah, basically I wanted to actually, in fact, I was going to do a whole podcast, which I'm going to do after this, but I think that I'm just going to finish this podcast as the introduction of my new brand, because that seems like it can be valuable to people to understand where I'm coming from. So like, I don't know how else to tell you this, but I am like super amped about my new brand, because I think my life from here on in is just going to be immensely more exciting. As another sort of, okay, and then what I also wanted to talk about was the logo that I've created and the name. So the name I've talked about, and actually I want to point out that I've named the brand Très Flavoured, not with the cookies intentionally. So I do operate with like Très Flavoured cookies as well. But the reason that I haven't put that in my actual, when I incorporated the business, was a very specific reason. And that reason is that it's this exact what I'm doing now. I want this brand to sort of represent and be a part of me in all the things that I do. And I don't want it to solely exist in the cookie world. I want it to be the Très Flavoured podcast, because that's what I'm running off of too. That's my jam as well. So the brand is Très Flavoured. Très Aromatisé Inc. is the French incorporated name. And then Très Flavoured Inc. is the name that I operate under. And then we get into the logo. So the logo was designed by an amazing, amazing artist named Aneta Palczowska, I believe. She is Polish, but she's lived in Toronto for some time. And I met her through a friend of a friend. And through a friend, sorry. And she is just this person that I latched onto her artwork immediately. And I think it was a very personal thing. She uses a lot of color, and it's very like bold images of people and stuff. And so I was basically like chasing after her for a long time to try and get her to work. Like, I didn't even know what that would look like, but I wanted her to do something for me. And so she created this logo, and actually the logo image as it is, the cookie with a bite out of it and drips coming from it, was actually extracted from a couple of designs that she proposed to me. And it wasn't initially super evident, but like I wanted to make that this bold concept of like this, I don't know, to me the image oozes flavor. It's like you're taking a bite out of it and you can taste it, and then it's like the drips just are like perfect, because it's like it's almost like you see the flavor coming out of the cookie. And then I was thinking like, okay, this is a cookie, but like that limits sort of my usability of the image. And then I was like, no, it doesn't. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is how it started. It started from these cookies, and I think that's essential to the brand. So I like that. And yet, like, it also can be symbolic of the flavor that exists in our everyday. And the diversity and the world flavor that we are all a part of by being ourselves in the world that we exist in. And so I am just like a whole lot of amped about this new brand. And I'm like, I really wanted to share that with you. So I really appreciate you listening to or watching this episode of my podcast called Très Flavoured. I hope you join like my journey of ridiculousness that I'm about to embark on with this. And I want to know your thoughts about the new brand, and if anyone's missing cultured dough cookies, or if you're listening to this podcast, I don't feel like there was so much attachment to flavored because it's kind of a new thing. But let me know your thoughts anyway. Thank you so much for watching this, and I really appreciate you listening to my excitedness about this, because otherwise just me being excited by myself, which is totally cool as well. Thank you so much for checking in on this episode, the very first episode of Très Flavoured. I love you all, and I want your feedback, and have a good one. Cheers. Ciao. Oh, don't forget, if you're interested, share and subscribe, the 2 S's. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.